we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
Now 500 naira they collect them.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Now 2,500 they pay.
There has to be a decision point. The way your baby's presenting, we have to rush you in. And my partner at the time was like, "You going to cut her? Are you going to cut her? Is it going to leave a scar?" And I said, "Oh, am I a belly dancer? What is the problem here?"
No, I'm vulnerable about the future of the children, the future of mine and the future of the generation of my children.
I want to have nude pictures taken. Of you? Yes,
Yeah,
but
we
without
have
showing my private parts. I want to put it in my front room. And they said, "You can't do that. People will be embarrassed when they came into your house." I said, "Well, it's my body and it's my front room."
All the things that we do, what is the purpose of it?
I just realized that I was more trusting before I was 6.
So many women, they just feel like I have to cook for my husband, I have to breastfeed my children, I have to pick them from school.
Because society expects
Then you
them
go
to.
home and you cry and you stop your career, you can't do anything, then you blame everybody. You took that choice.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. On the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
After 11 years, Shell agrees to pay Ogoni people a compensation of $45.9 billion for oil spills in their communities. And Lagos state government moves to reduce pensions of ex-governors. This is Plus Politics, and I am Mary Anna Cole. The Shell Petroleum Development Company, SPDC, has agreed to pay the 45.9 billion naira awarded to the Ogoni people of River State as the compensation for the oil spills in their communities. The lawyer to Shell, A.O. Ejelamo, said the company had resolved to pay the monetary compensation awarded in 2010. In 2001, the Ogoni people had instituted a suit against the oil company for the losses allegedly caused by the oil spills. Ibrahim Buba, then of Port Harcourt Division of the Federal High Court, in June of 2010, gave the judgment in favor of the Ogoni people, awarding 17 billion naira as compensation. SPDC appealed against the judgment up to the Supreme Court. However, it lost. Well, joining us to discuss this is Nimo Basi. He's an environmental activist, Celestine Akpobiri, National Coordinator of Ogoni Solidarity Forum, and of course we have Reverend Father Edward Obi. He is a public affairs analyst and he's also a representative of NACOND. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. All right, great. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Akpobiri, because you, of course, represent the Ogoni people. And I have been in several forums where this conversation about the payment of 45.9 billion naira is being paid to the Ogoni communities. And some people think it's been a long time coming. But there are also people who think that this is an insult on the communities, being that since 2010, 17 billion, if you count it with interest, should be over 45 billion. But then again, what do I know? But tell me what you think as someone who has been fighting for the interests of the Ogoni people.
Well, I want to correct the impression that I'm more Ogoni than my two reverend gentlemen. They are, all of us are all Ogoni people. We have been fighting together. We are in the trenches. Father Obijo left Ogoni today. Nimo Basi is always there. So Ogoni struggle is not a local struggle. We are all Ogoni. Yeah, I haven't said that. Yeah, 45 billion to some people, you know, it sounds so big considering the number of people in the Jama, the Bobo community. But if you weigh that, you know, with the losses that we have incurred, as per loss of livelihood and lives, then you will see that that's a paltry sum. That's just a slap on the wrist or shell. It's like taking my shirt from me and you cut one tiny button and give back to me. That is exactly what has happened. If you've gone through UNEP report, you will see that that report is a death sentence. And that's why life has become so short in Ogoni. So 45 billion, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing compared to what has happened to our people. However, if there is anything to celebrate about this judgment, it's the fact that for the first time, a Nigerian judge will be standing his ground and he fit to say, yes, you must pay this money. That's the only good news here. Because all what we've been seeing, if you have been following up litigation with oil companies, is that they will continue to bribe the judges until the litigants die. But I guess that they are changing their position now because they are not an island. They have heard that courts at The Hague, home country of Shell, and London, even in the US, in the case between Ken Saro-Wiwa family and Shell, that they've started giving favorable judgment to community people. So they don't want to look like they don't know what is happening in the world. I think so. If there's anything to celebrate, it's that for the first time we are hearing one good news from a court in Nigeria. Thank you. Interesting.
And let me come to Nimo, because we are talking about climate change every day. I spoke to a professor from a university in Boston, and we were talking about climate change and the wildfires in Turkey and the floods in India. I mean, we're also experiencing all kinds of climate changes in the different parts of the country. And here we are in Ogoni, we're not just dealing with an oil spill, but we're also dealing with a damage to, you know, the sources of revenue for these people, the sources of nature, their water, their farmlands. Literally everything has, one way or the other, been destroyed by this oil spill. Now, when we talk about the issue of cleanup, it's either it's being politicized or nothing is being done about it. But yes, money has now been paid. How about the cleanup? How about getting the people in those areas back to something that seems like normal? Is there a possibility? Mr. Bassi, can you hear me? I'm hoping that you have unmuted yourself so you can hear me. But if we cannot get Mr. Bassi, let's go to Father Obi. Father Obi, can you help us to answer that question?
Yes. Thank you, Mary Ann. You have touched upon something very important there. Climate change is a present reality and will continue to be present right up to the future. The wildfires that you are hearing about, the floods that you are hearing about, are not only in those faraway places, they're also right here in Nigeria. The impact of climate change in Nigeria cannot be separated from that. There's a direct correlation that can be made between the activities of organizations like Shell and the climate change incidents of global warming events even in Nigeria. Only recently, about a week or a week and a half ago, I was at a conference in Lagos where a research had directly tied the events in the northeast of Nigeria, like the Lake Chad area, with the oil and gas flaring that is going on in the Niger Delta. There are correlations that can be made at all times. And the fact that climate change is upon us, a little event like in the Niger Delta impacts not only Nigeria, but the global atmosphere. And if the global atmosphere is affected or impacted anywhere in the world, it also becomes our problem here. So it's about time that organizations like this, organization Shell, and other organizations that are bent on continuing the very unsustainable exploitation and use of fossil fuels, even in this day and age in our life, they should reconsider this and think of better alternatives that are being proffered all over the world. So let us not wait until we have reached 2 degrees. Let us start to make the preparations right now and give our people the adaptation mechanisms that they need to be able to cope with climate change and global warming as it occurs. The environment of the Niger Delta, particularly in the area of the Niger Delta known as Ogoni land and all its many and varied communities, remains impacted, remains subdued, remains already polluted, and for a generation and more, people from that area will continue to suffer this impact. Somebody said to me today after they saw Goi community and the pollution that went on there several years ago, they said, this is only the beginning. Shell will pay more than triple of that. And I believed him immediately.
Okay, well, Ndimbo Bassi is back. Mr. Bassi, I was asking a question before your network knocked you off. I was talking about the fact that climate change is, it's becoming more and more real to us. And the issue of the cleanup in Ogoni land has either been politicized, used as a campaign tool, but the reality is that nothing has happened. How do we get the people in those affected areas to have something close to at least a normal life if we do not start that cleanup anytime soon? And again, is there really a possibility in the horizon with the attitude of Shell and our government to see a cleanup anytime soon?
Well, thank you for tying up Shell and the government and the cleanup, because the two are very closely intertwined. The cleanup has started. We cannot deny that, actually. But you can say that it's not been as extensive as expected at this time, not as fast as expected. We have not seen work beginning on complex sites as at this time. And of course, there's been the criticism that the emergency measures have not been taken, have not been done 10 years after the UNEP report has been written. Now, if the cleanup is politicized, that's really sad, because it's very unfair for anyone to play politics with other people's lives. And this is the time not only to clean up Ogoni land, but to begin the process of cleaning up the wider Niger Delta. Because as we speak, there are oil spills ongoing somewhere in the Niger Delta. At every There are oil spills that last up to 1 year. I'll give you an example. The Ororo 1 well offshore Ondo State caught fire, blew up in April 2020. And that thing has not been attended to. There's still traces of spill, and for satellite images, we see some fire around there. And so when we have a situation where the entire region has become a sacrifice zone, we really need to worry, and we need to put pressure on the government to wake up to its responsibility. Shell is already showing signs that they want to wash their hands of the communities and move offshore. That is something that should worry us. That's something that should be a wake-up signal to our politicians. It's not enough to say, well, they're selling off their assets to local firms. No, they have to take care of their liabilities, and they should not be left off the hook just because they're moving somewhere else.
This is really interesting. I was taking notes because I'm going to come back to you to ask whose responsibility it is. But let me swing back to Mr. Kpobiri. The Ogoni Solidarity Front and many other fronts in Ogoni land and in the Niger Delta that are pushing for cleanup, especially the one in Ogoni land. What is the reception that you're getting in terms of government changing the tide of things? Because Nimmo has said that it's very slow, the pace of work is slow. At least there's been a start of sorts. But then we're looking at the time frame, and if it doesn't start early enough, then of course 25 years down the line, we will have children born into those communities, and God knows what kinds of diseases or what kinds of problems that they're going to face, whether it's ecological, whether it's health. I mean, we do not know. But what are the Ogoni people doing aside from going to court, aside from getting Shell to pay these monies? What are the Ogoni people doing to get their governments a bit more involved? And I'm not talking about the federal government, I'm talking about the River State government, to push so that this cleanup is not just lip service, but in actuality, it is done for the benefit of your people.
Well, you know the way politics is played in Nigeria today. The governor in power in River State is a PDP governor. The government carrying out the cleanup is an APC government. Actually, when this project started in 2016, the PDP people said that nothing was happening, that it was a campaign gimmick, because it was a PDP government that received the report in 2011 and did not do anything. So when the APC government said, we will clean, they said that no, that nothing was happening. So they only believed that something was happening when they heard that $380 million US was in an account, and they have actually awarded the first 21 sites and paid contractors. That was when they believed that there was money. So
but do you also think that it's because there's no synergy? Because I really don't understand whether it's a PDP or APC government.
No,
if there was a synergy, would there be a cause for doubt? Because if the federal government was liaising with the state government for something that they're doing at their backyard, would there not have been that clear, would that doubt not have been cleared?
No, it's the dangerous nature of politics played in Nigeria, especially in River State. Don't forget that Rotimi Amechi is leading the APC in River State, and Governor Wike is leading the PDP. They are irreconcilable. They can't meet. They are two parallel lines. So that's it. If the PDP government, we want to applaud what the APC is doing, then they'll be giving credit to them. But in fairness to them now, over 6 billion water contract was awarded in March this year. And that water project is being done in partnership with the River State Government Ministry of Water Resources. So that is the first synergy that they are having. The second one is being expected in the area of citing a Center for Excellence. I'm aware that IPREP are written to the governor to provide land for them so that they can commence fencing and possibly, kickstarting the building of a Center for Excellence. But we have a new board in place, and we have a new acting project coordinator in place. You have a new minister in place too. So that we also change the way relationships, are built. And so we look forward to having a better relationship. But our concern, it's just like Reverend Nimo said, is that what was tagged an emergency measure, like water, should have come first. This is what we should have, in a place where you have government that care for the people. As soon as they receive that report, which I call a death sentence, a state of emergency would have been declared in Ogoni. Call it any name. You can call it a federal capital, like the kind of name you call Abuja, Federal Capital Territory. Special development, because people were in a state of death. But because you have you have a situation where there is a total absence of government, they turn deaf ears to it. It is only now that they are beginning to award contracts for the water. It shouldn't be so. And like I said, community people are on them, and we will make sure that we mount pressure on whoever, whether they are the local government, whether they are the state or the federal government. We won't leave any stone unturned.
All right, back to you, Father Obi. He's talking about accountability here, but I want to talk about responsibility in terms of governments at all levels, because I remember how long it has taken for us to even address or scratch the surface of this Ogoni cleanup, and I've heard it for so long. And NAGON and other, NGOs of the nature of NAGON have been on this issue. I have been to so many sessions and fora where these issues are being discussed. So where is the sense of responsibility on the part of our leaders? Because if they were as serious, again, I would make reference to a conversation that journalists had on this issue. And many blame the insincerity on the part of our government to the reason why this spill and the cleanup has taken forever to happen. Now monies have been released. Where is the sense of responsibility and sincerity on the part of our leaders? How do we also ensure that CSOs, NGOs, how do you ensure that there's a follow-through to make sure that everything is done to the latter? And again, politicians don't take over this particular situation.
Well, your fear is like my fear, Mary. And, politicians may jump on the bandwagon now and begin to claim that this was their win and their gain, etc., and begin to do politics out of it. One thing that worries me is that politicians in Nigeria have lost every sense of the dignity of the human person. They are in the business of politics not for any other reason except to aggrandize themselves and to make gain out of it. Now, if they had any sense at all of the dignity of the human person, they would know that for over half a century, the people in this area have suffered the adverse effects, the impact of the oil and gas industry. And just when a research has come to light to prove that the things that we spoke about mostly in hushed tones are actually true, therefore they should be even more ready, more eager to take the bull by the horns and execute these projects that will bring relief to the people. You are talking of responsibility. How else can a politician be responsible to his people except by doing those things that will bring life and abundant life to their people? But this is what we haven't seen. 10 years of the UNEP report, and we haven't seen anything happen, or very little has happened. I was, as I said, in Bodo today, and I saw a boat being loaded with seedlings of mangrove to be planted in areas that they said they had cleaned up, But how long will it take for those mangroves to grow to the stature of the mangroves that were there before, that did all the work of, absorbing all kinds of toxic effluents from the industry, also cleaning the waters and acting as a barrier to erosion and flood in that area, and also as a spawning area for the fish that were always in that area spawning their little ones. So it would take more than a generation. And if you calculate all of that and put it all together, then you can see why I have a worry that the present crop of politicians that we have in Nigeria do not have the wherewithal. When I say wherewithal, I mean the ethical and the emotional, and also the responsibility wherewithal to be able to execute this. Okay. And I do not mean it lightly when I say that. I mean that we need a different kind of politics in this country, and particularly in this region, a politics that is politics that seeks the good of the people before their own self-aggrandizement. That's the kind of politics that we need in this region.
That's a conversation for another day. Don't even get me started. But let me go to Nimmo. Nimmo, I know that you have been an activist. You've spoken on issues of environment, the ecology and all of that. And you raised an issue earlier on, and I'm going to push that to you now. But finally, what is the future and the hope of these communities that are experiencing these oil spills and the degradation of the environment? And don't forget, Port Harcourt in itself is also experiencing a form of degradation. For years, we have been talking about the soot in the atmosphere, and that's also been another issue that's been politicized. I mean, really, where do we go from here?
Well, I think that's a very broad question. I would say that Nigeria as a whole is in a very desperate ecological situation. The entire coastline is under threat. We heard from the recent climate change report that sea level rise that is put in motion is more or less irreversible. It's going to go on for hundreds of years, and that is something to worry about. That means that those who are looking for seafront location for their homes should think about building their houses on stilts, on pillars above the waters, because the floods will certainly come. Now, the kind of desperation that we're seeing in Niger Delta, in the oil, and the communities with all the oil spill is very deep and complex, and we should truly be worried. It's alarming, because when you find communities having their source of drinking water contaminated, their farmlands contaminated, and these things are just left there, and corporations and government are busy blaming third parties and calling sabotage when there's no sabotage as being responsible as a way of avoiding action that should be taken, then we should really see that the people are being betrayed. The betrayal is deep and wide. And, it's looking at in the long term, with the low fortunes of the fossil fuel industry and the fact that the world is shifting away from fossil fuels, and fossil fuel industry would not be the biggest income earner in the near future, it is really a time for us to, as Akpobare said, as Alessi said, to declare a state of emergency in the entire Niger Delta. Otherwise, we're going to have not just stranded assets, but stranded communities. And this would be very, very sorry, a very sorry situation indeed. When the UNED report was released in 2011, some of the locations near Leme area had hydrocarbon pollution about 5 meters deep. And that was very alarming. The pollution has gone as deep as 5 meters. But by the time some of those locations were cleaned up last year, pollution had gone as deep as 10 meters, which means that for every day that pollution is allowed to linger on, means we are getting a deeper and deeper problem on our hand. Wow. Now, the recent case that the Shell agreed to pay the Ejama Ebubu people, that pollution occurred in 1970, and it's not been cleaned up, no matter what they say. So you can imagine what the situation would be right now if the cleanup were to begin at Ejama Ebubu. After so many years that the pollution has been, they were just a ton of soil trying to hide the pollution without a real cleanup. And so I see a situation where the people will not only accept financial compensation, which is just a token, a symbolic thing, but they should also demand a thorough cleanup of that location that has been like Shell's property since 1970.
All right. Well, Well, unfortunately we're ending on a very gloomy note and an uncertain note because we're not necessarily sure what the future holds. But I want to say thank you. Nim Mobasi is an environmental activist. I want to say thank you to Celestin Akpobiri. He is obviously of the Ogoni Solidarity Front, and Father Edward Obi is of Nagon. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about pensions for former governors. Is it something that we should strike out of our constitution here in Lagos? If you're a Lagosian, you want to be part of this conversation. Stay with us.
For upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Booking November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on PlusTvAfrica.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
The pensions of former governors and other officials of Lagos State is being threatened as the Lagos State House of Assembly just recently approved the report of its Committee on Establishment, which recommended the reduction of the pension by 50%. The committee also expunged the provision of providing houses in Abuja and Lagos for the former governors and reduced the number of vehicles to be made available for ex-governors and their deputies. A special report published in 2019 revealed that 21 states spent over 37 billion in servicing 47 ex-governors and their deputies between 2015 and 2019. 4 states, Bauchi, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, and Lagos, topped the big spenders list. Now, joining us to discuss this is Jide Ologun. He's a legal practitioner, and Achike Chude, political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
It's a pleasure, very much.
Great. Mr. Ologun, you're a lawyer, so and this committee has expressly said what they want to keep and what they want to take. But it beats me because, I mean, this might come as news to so many other people, but I have talked about this issue, and not just in Lagos State, but several other states, about how much money goes into servicing former governors and their deputies. For a country where we are, our account is ballooning, let me say that, or we're going belly up, should we still be allowing for these things to continue?
You just mentioned it now. If our economy were to be buoyant, then there won't be a big deal in taking care of these past governors. But as Nigeria remains the capital of poverty, I think our attention should be on how to cushion the impact of poverty on the people. And one of the areas of making sacrifice is the areas of those who probably were overtaken care of in office. We all know what it means to be a governor of a state in Nigeria for 4 years. We now talk about 8 years. Whether we admit it or not, quite a number of them have properties across the state, across the country. Some have investments abroad. They can easily take care of themselves. But in a situation where, for example, in Sokoto State, under the pension law passed in 2013, Sokoto State, as the capital of poverty in Nigeria, reportedly, spent about 200 million to 180 million on former governors and deputies, and provides them with domestic aids, residential and office accommodation, vehicles replaceable every 4 years. And what is paid to these former governors is the equivalent of the basic earning of the incumbent governor. So it's like they are not out of office at all. And when you take an ex-governor like Orji Uzor, who is now a senator, you take a former governor like Honorable Raji Fashola, who is now a minister, you find out that on both ends, they are still enjoying like this of the government, while the people are languishing in poverty. So if you are to consider the plight of the people, both sides of the argument, I believe that on the other side of the argument, particularly if you understand the political terrain of Nigeria, needs so much money to fuel the political ambition. You can imagine the billions of naira that go into furnishing this pension. In 2019, the state's internally generated revenue for was about 12 billion naira. Talking about Jigawa State now, and the lowest in the country as at mid-2020 came to 3 billion in 2017. And you'll be amazed that in a state where the human beings live with less than 377 naira a day, that billions of naira are spent on former governors and their deputies. They have 2 vehicles replaceable every 4 years, 6-bedroom apartment, furnished office, 2 personal assistants below grade level 10, and 2 drivers. And in the case of Lagos State, they have house in Lagos, house in Abuja, and you combine that with those who are still serving the federal government. So that means they will have the official residence of the federal government, or probably that will be monetized. And I think, finally on this segment, if you are considerate about the people, then you must look at what you enjoy and benchmark it with the stature of the economy. And right now, the economy of Nigeria is growing. People are going through hardship. So I must, on that note, partly commend the Lagos State government for reducing this bogus allowance with about 50%. But if you ask me, I think it should be fully abrogated, removed completely.
Okay. Achike Chude, it's interesting for a country where our resident doctors are being paid 5,000 naira for hazard allowance amidst a pandemic that is ravaging the world. And these people have to work under the harshest conditions with poor infrastructure. We still have teachers who are still pressuring government that if they are not paid certain allowances, they're going to go on strike. I mean, the list is endless. We have labor on one hand. Every now and again, they want to go. There are so many aspects of Nigeria's economy that has not been addressed. But we still haven't necessarily put our searchlights on the cost of governance. So when will it become a necessity for our governments to look within and start cutting costs and not paying lip service to it?
Hello, is that for me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the only reason why this issue of the allowances and the pensions for ex-governors is not a criminal offense is simply because the legislatures have used the instrumentality of the law to legitimize a morally offensive action. Otherwise, it will be a criminal action. And so it depends on how people, use the law. The law can be used to pervert the act, to pervert justice, or the law can be used to promote justice. In this case, the law is being used to pervert justice, and again, this is typified what is happening with these pension laws across the states, typifies, in vivid terms, the statement by Kalmeya, the American journalist, in his book, This House Has Fallen, where he described the country, Nigeria, unfortunately, as a criminally run corporation, where the leaders are armed and are hidden in the safe. So this is one typical example of our leaders hiding in the safe, being protected by state resources while they are busy looting the country dry. I mean, if the law itself is as outrageous as any law can be, but then you have just made a lot of points. And the points you made, talking about the very serious issues that we have, especially with some of the unions in the country, these perennial, strikes by the NLC and the TUC, ASO with all the problems they are having. Now the doctors are on strike and all that. So, and then in the midst of this, you find politicians and the elites that keep on asking people to make sacrifices while they are not ready to lift a hand to also make their own sacrifices. Just today, the discourse today, at least from the past the past 2 days, has been about the increase in the fees paid for licenses, for vehicle licenses, for number plates,
yes,
and driving licenses in the country. And this is just coming up again against the backdrop of the announcement by the Minister of Labor, the Minister of Works, that they are going to bring toll gates back into the country. So you find out that everywhere you go, the people are being buffeted left, right, and center. People who cannot even carry out meaningful social existence, on a daily basis. No access to healthcare and so many other things, and the country keeps on putting more and more burden on.
So where do we go from
them.
here? We need to go. What do we do?
Yeah.
What do we do? How do we wriggle ourselves out? Because look, you go to the market today with 5,000 naira, you cannot buy anything meaningful.
Yeah.
But yet we have to pay for all of these things, and we're taxed left, right, and center. Where do we go from here? In closing, because we have to go.
Well, is that for me?
Yes.
Well, the issue is that obviously the government is not working. Obviously, our political elites have shown incapacity to govern. The essence of the Constitution and the provision of the Constitution is for the welfare, for government to act in conformity with the welfare and safety of the people. It is not the business of government to keep on taking and taking from the people. So what I would think seriously is that we need to begin to look inward. We need to begin to make serious sacrifices. And the leadership, the political leadership in this country must lead the way. But what we have seen so far is they are not interested in making sacrifices. The people must look for a way to put the sufficient pressure on them and to tell them that they are not the ones that will continue to make the sacrifices on behalf of the nation. Majority of the sacrifice must come from the leadership. That is the only way. If we somehow we are not able to get to that level of imposing this level of responsibility and duty and obligation on the political leadership, things will continue to get worse. And then they must look for other means of revenue. They keep on talking about Nigeria being a mono economy, and the need, to also have other sectors of the economy play a critical role in national economy.
We have to go. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. Jide Ologun, Atike Chude, thank you so much. I wish we had more time to talk about this, but I'm definite that it will come back to the fore and we will have to tear this apart. But thank you so much for speaking with us, gentlemen.
That's Nigeria.
All right. Well, we'll take a short break and do a roundup of all the conversations we've had all through the week, because that's what we do now. Give you an idea of what we spoke about this week if you had not seen it. And for those who had seen it, let's rejig your memory. Let's start with the June 12 issue. He explained during that interview that if he had not done what he did, then there would have been a bloody coup. But why do you choose to say that he was afraid that he would be succeeded by a Yoruba person? I mean, they allowed the election to take place, even though the annulment was for security reasons, according to him.
Mary, first of all, they allowed the election to take place, but they never expected Abiola to win. They assumed that the Northerner would win because they apparently have the numbers. But what they didn't understand is that when a leader sells a vision to his people, what happens is the vision is what the people believe in. The other candidate did not really have anything to say. Matter of fact, in that election, if you notice, there was actually a debate. In that debate, my father floored his opponent hands down. It was seen across Nigeria. People saw what they were going to gain from Abiola. And when he talks about a coup, a bloodless coup or a violent coup, my father was adamant on not being violent. My father was the one who secured the nation from having blood all over the country.
I want to start with the issue of Delegiwa. Why wasn't that issue followed
Please
through?
allow me to respond to a few, submissions of Abdul Mumini. You don't just ask
and
questions.
Please make sure you answer mine too.
By not allowing me to follow up. Please wait. First of all, IBB as a Nigerian and a former military president has the right to own an opinion. He is protected by the 1999 Constitution as a fundamental human right of freedom to speak on issues. And whether Abdul Mumin lacks it or not, he has a better knowledge, better understanding of the intricate logic of the Nigerian Federation, if there's anything called a federation in this country. There are a lot of achievements that IBB put forward when he was president. So June 12 is just a scar.
Let me say clearly that if we had a truly federal constitution, if we had a system that allows for devolution of power and, if you like, resource control, we ordinarily would have had states that are effective, efficient, and effectual. We will have states that are viable. But tragically, what we have, which is a pseudo-federal constitution, where you have a federal government that controls just about everything, where you have a rent-taking and a rent-seeking system. You have states that are practically, if you like, not viable. That is why most people who are opposed to the call for creation of more states are of the opinion that the 36 that you have, how effective, how efficient are they, how viable are they? But I want to say that what we must do first in the call for a truly prosperous nation is to ask the National Assembly to allow for devolution of power, allow for resource control, such that states across this country will be able to manage their resources.
But I can tell you one thing for free. The average man on the street does not believe so. You have seen the NSAS riots, the NSAS protests, and you know that those things, that protest almost went out of control. It almost became what you would call a fight for democracy. People had already started asking for the president to resign. It was no longer an end to police brutality. It had become, a question of the systematic or the systemic rule of the APC. And we're seeing that everywhere.
Whose responsibility is it to give these young people a sense of direction? I'm hoping that you won't say government, because government can't do everything for us. Where is the role of the home? Where is the whole role of society? Who are the mentors and the idols that these people are supposed to look to give them a sense of direction? Please don't say government.
I know you don't want me to say government, but the truth of the matter is that it is the government. When the government creates an institution or a system that directly engages the youth, maybe, for example, there is a youth...
So you're telling me, I'm sorry, Shegun, you're telling me that families, that parents, that guardians, that people who are the ones that are responsible for bringing up these young people should totally jettison that responsibility for the government.
And so if government now is responsible for pointing your children in the right direction and telling them what to do, what do you as a parent do? What is your responsibility then?
What I'm telling you is this. The parents have raised their kids. They have sent them to school. The educational system takes it from where they are in school to teach them, to get them to have the best education they can have in that educational system. But when they leave school and come back to the job market, when they go out there to seek for a job, they need something that gives them a sense of purpose. Maybe that gives them a sense of purpose of contributing positively to the society or to themselves.
Let's stop. Well, that's what we had all through the week, a little bit of everything. My name is Mary Anako, and I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you on Monday on Plus Politics.
According to Plato, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. This is no surprise, as the music industry is one of the most booming industries in Nigeria, as the motion pictures and music recording accounted for 730 billion naira of Nigeria's GDP in 2020. It has not always been this way, as the music industry has experienced a full turnaround from the days the boys wore baggy jeans, big gold chains, and oversized t-shirts. Let me take you down memory lanes of the good old days. Onyeka Onwenu, Iyogogo. Tony Tetsuila, My Car. Plantation Boys, Don't You Know?
Baby, don't you know?